Hey guys, R0mulus here, and today we're going to be reviewing my first album for this channel. Since it's my first time, here's how I'll be ranking these albums for this video and future reviews. I'll be using the common scale that everyone else uses, ranging from 1 to 10. But don't worry, because I've got my own non-generic twist as well. Within certain numbers, there's going to be 3 different sub-rankings, you could say. If I say a strong number, for example, if I give the album a strong 6 out of 10, it'll show up as a 6 plus. If I say it's a weak 6 out of 10, it'll be a minus sign next to it. And if it's a solid 6 out of 10, it'll just be 6 alone. Now first some background on my music habits. I really don't like albums and don't prefer listening to them at all compared to just a bunch of singles over and over again. Because unless the album is either a 10 out of 10, really amazing, or can compensate by having a good narrative, why would I want to listen to that when I can only listen to specifically great songs when an album that's even like an 8 or a 9 out of 10 is going to have at least one bad song that I won't want to listen to? And why would I just do that when I could listen to my specific Spotify playlists? So with that mini ramble out of the way, let's talk about the Chainsmokers. They've been the punching bag for most critics that don't shoot videos exclusively in the dark. Their arrogant snarkiness combined with limp production and their first big hit being an awful fusion of commentary and a joke song. I completely understand why people do hate them, but I don't fully agree with that criticism. Sure, they aren't good by any means, but being an asshole in your music doesn't make you bad, it just makes you an asshole. People act like they're the new Black Eyed Peas in this decade's Black Eyed Peas, and it's a very toxic community of Chainsmoker haters. So overall, I actually do like some of their songs. They had 2 songs last year, Paris and that fusion with Coldplay, that were both very good songs. And so I do see the potential in them and have some respect for them. So with that out of the way, let's look at their new album from this year that they just released in the last couple weeks of December, Sick Boy. Sick Boy is the sophomore album coming from American DJ duo Alex Powell and Andrew Tagger, more commonly referred to as the Chainsmokers. I'm going to use quotations there because I don't really agree with calling this an album, more of a compilation of various singles, which, as I just said before, this already gives me some hope in this album. This is because their entire songs, the entire list of songs on this album was released throughout the year, with 10 out of the 12 months having one of the songs off this album being released, until the final culmination of all 10 songs being released in mid-December. So you already had a taste, and I was already be able to listen to some of these songs on my own, form some opinions before seeing how they culminate together and stir within that album pot. And overall, it doesn't feel like an album. It definitely doesn't. It feels like the Chainsmokers don't like how they're being perceived overall, and we'll get later into that why I think that's backfired. But it seems like they don't like their public persona. They don't like being the selfie guys or even being the closer guys. They want to branch out a bit. And this album, within these 10 songs, there's a lot of variation from their standard production to more tropic vibes like Calvin Harris did, to even some EDM pure like dubstep, like how Dead Mouse did. And it's interesting to see how they're branching out, and I can already start to favor it, seeing how they're at least trying to be unique and experimental. Now that's great and all, but the real question in why you listen to music is the sound. So how does this album sound overall? And the real answer is it's not good, to be honest. Sure, I can give props to certain guest vocalists that are on this album, specifically Kelsey Ballerina and Emily Warren on This Feeling and Side Effects respectively, but past that you start to get really through all the good in this album. And the vocals specifically for Andrew Tagger, he's not a singer and should not be a singer. We learned this back in the early parts of the 2010s with Calvin Harris with The Summer, and how he should not sing. So why should Andrew Tagger be able to sing? Like seriously, on one of the songs he genuinely sounds like Jake Paul, And that is not a comparison you want to have if you want to actually be a good vocalist. And also, just to say, I feel like he is kind of trying to rip off Calvin Harris here, not just with trying to be an awful singer, but also there's more tropical vibe on certain songs like This Feeling, Side Effects. It kind of reminisces to how Calvin Harris last year released his album Funk Waves Volume 1, and that was a successful. So maybe, this duo is trying to model off him, but that's not the only criticisms of possible plagiarism and stealing other people's themes I have on this. The song's Sick Boy, which is the title album for this song, the first one released, it's not the worst song by like actual sound, but it's probably the worst in themes and ideas because it is essentially just a 21 Pilots ripoff. Seriously, he's trying to do some social commentary about being on the east side of America and trying to comment on that, but he doesn't deliver anything. His like actual delivery and how he's like passionate about it, it's not there at all. And the production behind that, I didn't say it was like completely awful, but it isn't backing any of the themes that he's trying to deliver with that song. It just feels not only forced but also a bit of pure plagiarism, trying to ride off the 21 Pilots wave that happened in 2015 and 2016. That isn't the only time though where Andrew Taggart genuinely sounds like a disgusting person. Everyone Hates Me is probably the worst song off this album. It's not only because the production's all blocky and generally unlistenable like most of their songs on this album are, it's just he's so whiny. And I did say earlier in the beginning that just because you're a bitch doesn't mean you have bad music. But when you combine over whining and not even having like a playful whine like how Drake sometimes did on Scorpion, it's it's really obnoxious, especially when you're complaining that everyone hates you and you're trying to branch off. It does make it look like you aren't actually trying to branch off, and maybe I was wrong in that analysis at the beginning. It's actually starting to affect how awful this album truly is. And speaking of awful, their production, they're supposed to be these two DJ duos. It doesn't sound like they're refined at all. Like, seriously, I heard better production on Memories, their other album, and that wasn't even a good album overall. uh, so, on certain songs, like their two dubstep songs, on one of them, it genuinely sounds like the rubber boots from SpongeBob. Yeah, I'm giving the title of worst song to Sirens overall for just how obnoxious that reminds me of. Like, yeah, if you're getting comparisons to SpongeBob and Jake Paul, it's definitely not a right step in direction. So at the end of the day, I feel like this was a failed attempt of trying to branch out while at the same time trying to stick with what you are defined as being the jerks of music, and the same time also while branching out trying to rip off some other better artists than you, specifically Calvin Harris and 21 Pilots. So overall, while there are some good vocals and certain moments where they do feel like their claims to being actually good EDM producers is there, I can't in full faith give this any good score, and I was about to give it a 4 out of 10, but you know what? It's just a strong 3 out of 10 for me. I would not recommend this to anyone, and I hope 21 Pilots just realizes that this, especially since none of the songs charted that well, let's hope that they realize that this was a failure. And I'd even go back to some of their old songs, like Closer. It wasn't good, but it was definitely better than this. So, to Andrew Taggart and Alex Paul, please go back to your old stuff. It was better than this.